elle est en place. C'est la poudre.
Tiens, on a découpé une femme en morceaux rue de la bienséance à 2 pas du chat. Tiens, on a découpé une...
I am a feminist.
Je vous obsède avec une constance
Je ne me suis pas conduite
qui appelle quand même l'admiration.
d'une façon conforme à ce qu'on attend d'une jeune fille d'abord et d'une femme ensuite.
I'm sorry that I didn't become the world's first black classic pianist.
Des femmes artistes, activistes, inspirantes, politiques, des femmes puissantes.
Je crois qu'une femme qui existe dans son temps, à l'intérieur de son temps, n'a pas d'époque, elle
Bienvenue
marque son époque.
dans la
Boum.
poudre. I am Lauren Bastide, and today my guest is Vandana Shiva.
They never say we're colonizing you. We are taking over your land, your lives. We are extracting from you. They say we're saving you. This saving is the narrative of colonization because the earth doesn't need saving. She's alive. She needs partnership. She needs care. Women don't need empowerment. Women are powerful.
On the 21st of January 2017, I was in Washington D.C. at the Women's March. This gave birth to the episode La Marche, published on the 8th of March 2017. That's where I recorded the "We are not afraid of Donald Trump" that you can hear in the opening credits. I can't believe it's been 3 years already. It was the spark, the starting point of the feminist revolution we're living today. On that day, 500,000 women were on the streets of Washington. And on that day, I met one woman, Ashley McCray.
My name is Ashley McCray, MCCRAY. I'm an enrolled member of the absentee Shawnee tribe of Oklahoma. I'm also Oglala and Sicangu Lakota. My mom comes from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. I come from the state of Oklahoma, which is Indian country. There are 39 federally recognized tribes there, so that means 39 independent sovereign nations. Although the United States government does not recognize our sovereignty and still continues to build fracking developments and pipelines through our sacred burial grounds, they actually dug up my ancestors. Everything is linked, and that's something that's been difficult for white feminism to really come to terms with, is intersectionality. But as Indigenous people, we're already intersectional because we have to deal with the environment, against violence against our men and our women, colonization and rape, murder. We've been facing this sort of oppression for 500 years. It doesn't matter if it's Donald Trump or the most liberal person. The fact of the matter is the United States government is an occupying force. They came in, they stole our land, they killed our people, they raped our women, and they forced us onto reservations. They forced us off of our homelands, and then they came in and they forced their government upon us. So me, as a Lakota woman, as a Shawnee woman, I don't accept this government.
This encounter was crucial for me. Thanks to her, I understood that patriarchy, colonialism, and capitalism were 3 sides of the same system. With Vandana Shiva, we talked about staying hopeful, hugging trees, and disobey. Vandana Shiva, hello.
Hello.
It's such an honor to be able to talk with you today on that.
My pleasure.
First of all, I want to thank you for the everlasting work you have made for environmental justice throughout your life, and especially for your last book, Oneness versus the 1%, that really blew my mind, and that just came out in France. I was very sensitive to one of the messages of the book. If we start talking about catastrophe, we're not going to be able to do anything. And I had the feeling your book, although it also warns on the huge danger we're going ahead, gives hope. I was wondering, how important is hope?
I think hope is central, because if you don't cultivate hope, you won't change the system and the path that is leading to inevitable extinction, that is creating catastrophe. So hope really is your commitment to an alternative and to make the alternative real, to create the space for alternatives to grow.
But in the meantime, in the book, you explain that, for example, there are so many alarming figures. Like, for example, we have 12 years before mass extinction becomes irreversible. That doesn't feel like a hopeful thing. It feels like a catastrophe. You want to hide and cry.
I think taking into account real threats, for example, the 12-year figure is from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And they're saying if we don't shift in 12 years, the momentum of irreversibility will be too high for human intervention. We have to take that reality into account and therefore make our 12-year the transition year. Now, it doesn't mean that the world will end in 12 years, but it does mean these 12 years are our space of possibilities. And that also doesn't mean we panic. Because the more we panic, the more we get seduced to do the wrong thing. We have to fully be aware that we are part of the earth. That is the first place for regeneration and cultivation of hope. Secondly, we have to start living it. Living it through the way we grow our food and eat our food, living it in the way we clothe ourselves, living it in the way we relate to each other. And that cultivation of hope then becomes the transition. And I have done work in building ecological alternatives. I can tell you in 2 years' time, the reality is different. In 3 years' time, communities think differently, have totally different values. And the one thing we have to give up in our times is the idea of inevitability. Inevitability of the 1% to rule over our lives through their technological narratives. The inevitability of catastrophe. And the inevitability that everything is just downhill. Things change. The beauty about learning from the earth is things evolve. And the second beauty of learning from the earth that I've learned from my work with seed is you plant a seed, you get a crop. And then for 8 months, the seed is sitting quiet. Its latent period is not a dead period. It's just waiting for the right sun, for the right moisture, the right water, and the right soil fertility. I have saved seeds that have been sitting in women's bins for 40 years, and they burst out into fertility. And that, to me, is a reminder that periods of what seemed like human inertness doesn't mean human consciousness cannot become alive again, that human beings in their amazing capacities cannot act for healing the earth.
We can bloom again.
Yes.
Yes. What I'm very sensitive with your work, and it was also in your previous books and in every conference you give, is that you remind us of our oneness with nature and with earth. And it's funny because when you listen to some speeches like collapsology speeches, you have the feeling human is trying to save himself, like humanity is trying to escape from a decaying earth. When the idea is just saving the whole bunch. We're part of the earth. And you remind this link.
Yeah. So, I had an early life as a physicist, but I chose very consciously to not cultivate the mechanical mind. I consciously chose to do a PhD in the foundations of quantum theory to cultivate the mind of non-separation, the mind of potential, and the mind of non-essentialism. Because when there's potential, there's nothing essential. Properties aren't fixed, they're not determinate. And therefore, trajectories are not fixed. Our trajectory is open. And our trajectory is one with the earth because we never are separate. When I wrote Staying Alive, I kept saying, what makes a bunch of people think the forest is a dead mine of timber? What makes men particularly think that the river is just this much kilowatt of energy to be extracted? What makes them develop this extractivist, mechanical way of relating to the earth? And that's when, in my research, I found the book by Francis Bacon talking about the birth of masculine time. There's the separation from nature, which he called objective knowledge, was basically premised on nature being inert, nature being dead, and us not being part of nature. That he called the birth of masculine time. It's the birth of ecological destruction. But this has been caused in a short 300 years of a way of thinking. Across the world, women, indigenous people, ecological thinkers think differently. And now is the time for all of us, with all our diversities, to become part of one massive regeneration project, to say, no, just like extinction is not inevitable, and escape to Mars is a stupid idea. Collapse is not inevitable, and collapsology, to say we'll save ourselves while the earth dies, no, forget it.
Yes.
Forget it.
It's really interesting. I wanted to remind that you are, to begin with, a very brilliant scientist. You have a PhD in physics. You're an expert in
Quantum theory.
Quantum theory.
Foundations of
it's
quantum
something
theory.
that no one in the earth understands, and still you're criticizing this way, this science, as being presented as one truth. And this one truth is not real knowledge. And I think it's really hard for Occidental people to get rid of this idea that science is truth. You managed to bring it in a very subtle way.
So science basically means to know. Sciere is its roots. And, someone who cooks well knows the science of cooking. A farmer who cultivates a field has the science of cultivation. Even the word agriculture, its root is the care for the land. But today, agriculture has become the science of war against the land from the labs of Hitler's Germany. All the tools of genocide that were evolved to gas people, those tools became the foundation of pesticides. Those tools became the foundation of chemical fertilizers from the ammunition factories. So a militarized mind gave rise to a particular kind of science, which is expertise in killing. But there are so many sciences, unique to every culture. But even within Western science, just biology has 500 streams. And reductionist genetics and genetic reductionism is one false stream which has the power to dominate. I've written in my book, Biopiracy, how the people who worked in Hitler's labs were then migrated to the United States, and they continued the eugenics program. At that point, they didn't have the word gene. They call it the atom of determinism. And they had a word called social psychology. We've got to internalize the idea of inferiority of women compared to men, of blacks. At that time, there were no big debates on blackness, but it was a big debate on the black-haired Europeans who were migrating, and they were seen as a big threat. So eugenics was actually financed, and this gave rise to the discipline of reductionist molecular biology. And this has been very well documented by an amazing historian of science in Harvard, Lily Kay, and she calls it the molecular vision of life. And she worked in the Rockefeller archives to show how the militarized mind and the mind at warfare created this narrative that it's all in your genes. But nothing is in the genes. The gene is a dead molecule.
Of course.
Living systems are complex self-organized systems, and human beings are complex self-organized systems. So the idea that the false narratives of the powerful are science, and the knowledge of the rest is not science, is the most difficult challenge of our times, because it's been so deeply internalized, and it has been internalized like a religion. If colonialism was spread for greed, but justified through civilizing mission of Christianity, which allowed the genocide of 90% of the Native Americans. Today's civilizing mission is really a false narrative about science and technology. Science is to know, technology is tools. Every society has had it. And in everything, how to control pests, I can do it in 500 ways. But the stupidest way to try and do it is to spread poisons because it creates new pests. Mm. So a tool gets assessed in terms of how does it compare to alternatives, how effective it is in doing the job it was meant to do. And when we stop treating technology as tools to be evaluated, chosen, assessed, democratically spread in society, and you start defining it as a religion imposed on humanity as the new civilizing mission of our time, you get violence, you get the death of democracy, and you get failing tools.
It reminds me also of what you describe in your book, that all this system of patterns that makes like something natural things like seeds are that makes it private, that makes it belong to some company. And you say like it's like making illegal the daily lives of people. Like of course when you plant a seed it's going to grow, and people have known this for 1,000 years, but because of this laboratory it's going to watch the seed and describe this genome, it's going to decide it's his seed and make money out of it. It's the same, it's a colonization of nature.
It is very definitely the colonization of nature, and I have called patenting of seed and patenting of life as the second coming of Columbus. And I have called Bill Gates as the Columbus of our time, because he's now trying to do the same, both through genetic engineering as well as through digital patenting.
Yeah.
You know, why is it so wrong? Because seed and any living system is an autopoietic system. It organizes itself. If I add a new gene into it, I haven't made the seed. The future generations of seed still make themselves, except that now they make themselves with a toxic gene of Bt or a toxic gene of herbicide resistance. And because it's a toxic gene, we should, in the self-organized assessment of a living system, treat it as pollution, because anything that doesn't belong to an ecosystem, anything that doesn't belong to an organism and harms it, should be seen as a pollution. Instead, they tried to create the narrative that seed is their invention. And I'd done the book on impact of chemical farming as the Green Revolution on Punjab and the destruction of Punjab. It was called The Violence of the Green Revolution. And then I was invited to this meeting in Geneva and Beaugèvre in France in 1987, where the chemical industry was now working out this idea of them being inventors of seed. And I said, this is so wrong. This is just so wrong. You don't invent seed. You can't have a patent on seed. And if it's going to take all of the rest of my life to prevent you from having patents of seed and having seed freedom and having farmers have their own seed, this is what I'll do. So I went back and started to save seeds.
That's what you did.
That's what I did. I stopped the work on dams, I stopped the work on forests, because there were now young people in these movements, but no one was looking at patents and seeds and GMOs and free trade agreements. And I look back and say, okay, I started just to defend the freedom of the seed and the freedom of the farmer. Today we have created 140 community seed banks. Some of them have rescued farmers after disasters of cyclones and hurricanes, because we saved flood-tolerant and salt-tolerant seeds, and Bill Gates claims he invented the flood tolerance. We have saved seeds of drought tolerance, and as the water crisis, which is another impact of industrial agriculture, grows, these seeds become more and more relevant. And with every extreme drought, these seeds show the way. But I also worked with our government, and we managed to get a law passed that seeds are not inventions. Mm-hmm. So seed cannot be patented. And Monsanto has worked illegally in India to collect royalties by deceiving. And it's only now this is coming out. And now people say, oh, you used to say this, but we thought they had a patent. I said, they can't have a patent. And I think more important for me, deep within me, I feel so satisfied that here were the new Columbuses trying to define life as their invention. And I think my little dedication to life on earth, to biodiversity, to the seed, its self-organization, its freedom, the dedication to the right of farmers to save seed and exchange seed, and the duty of farmers to save and exchange seed, that it has prevented the naturalization of that patriarchal cosmology.
Well, thank you so much for that. Well, in your last book, you actually, I would gonna say attack, but more like you denounce these 1% super rich people to be like the main enemy of the planet. The book opens with this incredible figure. Like in 2010, there was like more than 300 billionaires owning like half of the world money, and now it's like 5 of them, which is like incredible. You think the world is in a crisis, but actually the rich are getting richer and richer at a crazy pace. And also you remind that they use this humanist speech. They make people believe they're actually saving the world, where they're using this to pay less taxes and to get patterns on so many things. My question is, why are you the only one to say that? Why are you the only one to say that? It's so revolting, and it seems like everybody's believing the whole thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, actually, let's not forget that even in the first colonization, the civilizing mission was supposed to do us good, even if it meant that to be civilized we had to be killed.
It was the same
so,
speech.
In a way, all that's happening today is the money making and the money machine is basically creating narratives to say it's for your health.
It's for your good.
For your good. Colonizing farmers in Africa is, we're saving you. Civilizing missions are always saving the colonized. They never say we're colonizing you. We are taking over your land, your lives. We are extracting from you. They say we're saving you. This saving is the narrative of colonization because the earth doesn't need saving. She's alive. She needs partnership. She needs care. Women don't need empowerment. Women are powerful. So when you say, why is it only me saying all this? I think part of it is that I have always responded to a deep challenge, that is a deep ethical challenge and a deep ecological challenge and a deep challenge to humanity. So when I saw destruction of forests, I said, I'm going to dedicate my life. When I saw this owning, patenting seed, I said, I'm going to save seeds. But it then threw me into areas of the new colonization. And the book has been written with Bill Gates as the driver of the latest phase. If Monsanto was the driver 95 to the year 2015, Bill Gates is the big driver of our times. And I think partly because of my scientific background, I'm able to read through the lies spoken in the name of science. The word science doesn't shut my mind because my mind is a scientific mind. And in fact, it gets even more activated when a lie is told in the name of science because science is so precious to me. The other is that, I spent a lifetime in defending the truth, defending women's freedom, nature's freedom. And no matter no matter how powerful somebody is, but if their power comes from dishonest grounds, brutal grounds, grounds of injustice, I don't only feel compelled to speak the truth, I feel that it's absolutely necessary for solidarity with everyone else. And if I was given that space that I can speak, I must speak.
You were one of the very first thinkers of ecofeminism, and I think what you've just explained to us is like it's crystal clear. Like colonization, capitalism, and patriarchy are like the same, different names for the same object.
Yeah.
And you came to this conclusion when you realized that in India most farmers were women, and that they had the knowledge to make food that was not destroying the earth. My question might be a bit naive, but I think it's what people think of ecofeminism. Are women more likely to save Earth than men?
I think womanly ways of caring that have stayed conserved in the culture of women under division of labor, where women were left to take care of that which patriarchy did not count as work, to take care of that which did not make profits, but those were the domains of life and living. So I don't believe that only women have this capacity. I believe in potential, but I believe this potential has stopped being cultivated in men because the construction of gender is a cultural political process. And men were made to believe that to be a full man, you can't appear to be weak, because to care is to be weak. Why else would Francis Bacon talk of the birth of masculine time? There's nothing like a masculine time. There's time. And in our language, time is Kali. She is the ruler, and she's circular. So I personally believe that what has happened is we've been made to forget our potentials. And we've been made to forget that not only are human beings capable of caring, that caring is now a survival necessity. Caring for the earth, caring for each other. What is community but caring for each other? Consumerism is going to shop alone. But community is reclaim the commons, cultivate sharing. So the sciences of caring and sharing, and when I say sciences, I mean sciences, because we now know that underground, in the organic soils, the mycorrhizal fungi is moving minerals around. It's communicating with plants, saying, oh, you don't have enough, I'll get it from there. It's a soil food web richer than the internet and the World Wide Web. The trees are talking to each other. The insects are talking to each other. They're talking, when we eat food, our food is talking to the microbes in our gut. We are in a very intelligent universe. And these intelligences were drowned with the idea of the mechanical mind. Women had to keep these intelligences alive, otherwise the world wouldn't be alive. The social world would have been extinguished during the wars. Who was bringing the food on the table? The mothers and the grandmothers. There was no food, and yet with a little bit they would do something. And because they kept this culture, values, knowledge, intelligence alive, they have to be the teachers of the transition in these 12 years that we have. Women will not be the only ones. I believe the young children are rising. A lot of young men come to me to try and understand why, to overcome eco-apartheid, one of the first steps is to overcome patriarchy as well as our separation with nature, and you overcome the same. I would say the same for racism. And as you said, all of these oppressions are a continuum because we are interconnected. None of us get oppressed individually. The 1% oppresses it all. They're threatening nature, which is why ecological emergency. They're threatening women, which is why we have femicide on a very, very large scale. And not only are they actually physically exterminating women, they are so afraid of womanly thought because it is kind thought. Womanly thought says, I can be free. And they're afraid of freedom. And womanly thought says, I can be alive. And they're afraid of life. The war of today that I've tried to document in my book is a war of extermination, the fear of life. And women have kept this alive, and we need to spread it to our children, to our partners. We need to spread it. Learn from other species. Not only are women the leaders, I believe nature is a leader for this transition.
It has been proven lately that most of the time when a woman gets killed is the moment where she wants to leave, when she wants to get her freedom back. So what you just said, I really echoed to this in my mind. And also it occurred to me that you talked about the science of care, but like what women have been doing for ages and have been like educated to do for ages, because of course it's not biological, caring for the others is so despised in our society. People who care are less paid. They are considered that their knowledge is not as important as like more immaterial knowledge. And maybe this hierarchy also is going to change, I hope.
Well, it will have to change. If humanity has to stay alive, we will have to overcome the idea that women engage in mindless bodily function. They are purely reproductive machines. No research is showing that in those early days of care, how much transition of knowing is taking place to the child, even before the child learns to speak.
Yes.
And care is, in my view, not only an expression of compassionate intelligence, of intelligence of oneness, the intelligence of that is not mechanical, that's not of separation. But it is also, I believe, not just a knowing, but a knowing that's integral to doing and living. And it's this division that there are some who know, and this is what Descartes created, you know. There's people with objective knowledge that have a spiritual connection, and then there's extension. And that extension is just mass and length. And so there was a constant putting down of the body, including the earth's body, which was declared dead, women's bodies, which were just treated as machines, and intelligence was taken away from both the earth and women. And now, not only are the new sciences waking up to this, but indigenous cultures are having the courage to say, but we knew this.
You always knew. You grew up among nature. Your father was a forest keeper and your mom was a farmer. I was wondering, does your childhood have a big impact on the activist you are today?
My childhood gave me a reality whose loss made me the activist. Because I decided to become an activist the day I saw a forest that I'd gone to visit, not there anymore. And this was before my trip to Canada to do my PhD. I said, let me carry a bit of my Himalayan home with me. And this forest I'd chosen to trek wasn't there anymore. And the stream had become a very miserable little stream. And then I started to talk to the villagers, and they told me about Chipko, the movement of hugging the tree. That's the day I decided. I was anyway leaving for Canada, but I said every vacation we'll go to volunteer with Chipko. And that was the birth of my activism, and it hasn't stopped.
And this group, Chipko, it was mainly women, right?
All women,
Only
100% women. Amazing, amazing. I learned so much from them. I call them, so I went to the University of Western Ontario for my PhD in the foundations of quantum theory on a thesis called Non-Locality and Hidden Variables in Quantum Theory. And I say I went to the Chipko University for everything I know about biodiversity, ecology, forests, and women's knowledge.
And also activism, because
Yes.
you describe their way of blocking the destruction of the forest with their own body,
With their own body.
hugging the
Exactly.
trees.
Yeah.
And this is also inspiring many actions that happen, because this is like in the 80s, the beginning of the 80s,
No,
right?
early 70s.
Or early 70s. But you managed to have the law pass in 81 or something?
81.
Yes.
81, the logging, because by then,
Took you 10 years.
till then the government was still thinking, the British had made the forest their timber mines because they changed Indian culture. We are a culture of the forest. We protected forests. And then the British came and wanted more logs for railway lines, for making ships. And they totally changed the practice, just as much as in agriculture, the practice of farming was changed to use leftovers of war chemicals. And everything was redefined. And the government really thought it was getting big money out of royalties from forest contracts, till a big flood happened. And then they realized women were so right, because the women were saying, don't be stupid. I remember an action, they carried lanterns. And they were told, but the sun is out, why are you carrying lanterns in daytime? They said, it's not for the sun, it's for you. You think these are timber mines, and they bring you revenues. But their real product is soil, water, and pure air. And that's why we must defend these forests. Well, when a flood hit in 78 and went all the way to Calcutta, the government realized that what they were spending on flood relief was much bigger than the royalties, and the economics shifted to conservation. And I think again and again and again, that's what we are seeing. The first step of resistance is the movement is criminalized. Then the disasters keep growing. And then they realize what was being spoken is the truth.
Mm. And what they also learned you, and it's still in your book today, 40 years after, maybe almost now.
45, 47.
7 years after, it's civil disobedience.
Yes.
And it's still the technique you say we should use today.
And it's not that I'm saying we should use today. Look at the Extinction Rebellion. What are they using? They haven't read my book. Or maybe they have.
I hope they have.
But I think people are getting a new confidence that you have power. And your highest power is to withdraw consent. Gandhi called it a no from the deepest conscience. you can only be strong when you act from your deepest conscience. And when you know your conscience is telling you extinction is not inevitable, and I'm going to come in the way of actions that are leading to extinction, that's the civil disobedience of Extinction Rebellion. All my life, beginning with Chipko, the hugging action was disobedience against a forestry system of mining the timber. All my life, every action I've been engaged in has been not cooperating with the law, a structure, and very often I've had to think deep about what will be the action. So when I heard these companies talk about patenting seed, GMOs, international laws on intellectual property, and I said, this sounds like imperialism over life. How does one resist this? What is the civil disobedience? And taking inspiration from Gandhi's spinning wheel and his satyagrahas, I said, we'll save seeds and we will not obey any law that comes in the way. And since then, that's how I worked with our communities. Our communities take a pledge. We've received these seeds from our nature, from our ancestors. We have a duty to hand over this biodiversity in the richness and integrity with which we received it. We refuse to obey law. We refuse to adopt technologies that come in the way of this duty, and therefore, we will not accept patenting. We will not allow GMOs in our region. We will not allow chemicals in our region. And this is how the Living Democracy movement grew. And that's the basis of my having written a book called Earth Democracy, that's the future. Either we will all collectively work as an interconnected Earth family, defend our collective freedom, and make a future, or we will be collectively extinct.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Gandhi a few times, and he also appears in your book. It's actually like you describe all these propositions we should still use today. Well, Gloria Steinem told me, and she also wrote it in the book, that Gandhi learned everything from Indian feminists. Are you aware of this? Is it true?
Yeah, he writes very often that he learned a lot, and he used to say a daily prayer, make me more womanly. Basically, he consciously wanted to cultivate his compassionate intelligence. And because it was in the women, he recognized it. And my mother, interestingly, I just reprinted a book my mother wrote before my birth about women and Gandhi. And it was lying somewhere in a remote part of our old house. And I found it and I said, we must reprint it for the future. It's in Hindi, but it's a beautiful book.
It's incredible.
And my mother was amazing because she said, why do they have nursery rhymes that say, Jack and Jill went up the hill and fell down? Rockabye baby, then the baby falls. Why is everyone dying? And she wrote nursery rhymes for us on nature and trees.
Oh, wow. What an amazing mom. Vandana Shiva, you relentlessly travel the world, working, marching, talking. I was wondering if you had access to your room of your own sometimes.
I actually gave up a room of my own long ago. So when I'm in Delhi, I share home with my sister. When I'm Dehradun, I share a home with our ancestral home with my brother. And then I'm on the farm where I'm with the community, where it depends on which room is empty, and I sleep on that bed that day.
So you really don't have your own room?
I don't have to escape from anything, because every moment of my life is lived for the earth, for people, and therefore there's nothing that, for me, says now I must get away, because for me, engagement is the fulfillment, and you don't have to get away from relationships.
If I tell you powder, la poudre, what do you think of? Is the name of the program Powder? What does it remind you of?
Well, at this point, it makes me think of Johnson & Johnson selling baby powder with asbestos or whatever it was. But otherwise, powder, I guess beauty.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I haven't had much powder in my life.
It's just a question I ask to every guest, and it's always funny to see everybody has his own vision.
But why did you name it powder?
Because of the ambiguity of it. It could be very light and beautiful and cosmetic, but also it could be war gunpowder. And I think women have both sides and many more. So it was about diversity.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Vandana Shiva.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Vandana Shiva for being my guest in La Poudre. Nouvelles Écoutes is the executive producer of La Poudre, a podcast produced by Aurore Meyer-Mailleux and Marion Emery, prepared and recorded by Gaia Marty.